We're up here in the hill country of Wisconsin here, starting to scout for 2019. And I wanted to get out here and try to start scouting a bunch of different public land areas and decide if I wanted to possibly hunt a different state either early in the season or just in case I would tag out in Iowa. And I just didn't want to have the same factor where I couldn't hunt for a while in Iowa. So we're out here in the hill country. Like, there's some mega hills out here, and just going out today and scouting some public around here, trying to get an idea of what I think pressure would be, where I would possibly hunt, and that's possibly the main goal. But I want to try to see if there's any like rubs or signs, and then ultimately it'd be the top of the line would find a buck bed. But yeah, overall, I don't really know much about this area other than it gets hunted pretty hard. I do know that, just because what I've heard about Wisconsin, but it's going to be a new challenge, and hopefully I can find an area that I think I'd be willing to hunt and either come back in during turkey season to keep scouting and maybe shoot a turkey, or hunt during deer season for sure. So I'm kind of a toss-up between Wisconsin and Missouri for a backup plan, but I kind of like the idea of Wisconsin, but because it's a new challenge, but we'll just have to wait and see. So we're going to get out and freeze today. It's like 28 degrees, and hopefully find some good potential scouting areas, and hopefully can teach ourselves something and you guys something as well. So, yep. So every time we're scouting public, it's always good to try to look for like human sign, especially when you haven't been to an area before. So we're walking in, and I'm still going deeper, and I'm trying to think to myself where people would hunt. And I don't know what the regulations here are in Wisconsin about trimming tree lanes and stuff, but behind me there's a batch of trees here that have been hand cut by someone, and I'm guessing it looks like there's a spot where they got into their tree up in there in that tree, and they're planning on shooting. Right here is a deer would funnel across this bend here, and it could be a good spot, I don't know, but looking at this here tells me that somebody was hunting this at one point. Signs like that, even if that is illegal, I don't know for sure, but that just gives you away if somebody's been in here. So keep moving. So far I've seen a good sized buck track, and the habitat's actually changing and looking really good the further back I go. There's some ag that's up closer to the road, and so my plan here is if I hunt it either in September or October sometime, the further deep you go is where the bucks are going to be bedded, and I want to guarantee that almost. And these bucks are going to start moving right at last light, so I'm going to want to be back there deep if I'm going to hunt this unit. But overall, I really like the habitat change in the diversity so far. So okay, so we're still getting back into where we want to hunt, and I've been seeing a lot of little rubs, and the signs have gotten a lot better. In front of me here, there's a really long ridge that starts to go down, and that's where I'm going to start to kind of target this area. But we get questions, or I've seen a lot of things about like the size of a rub and if it correlates to a bigger deer. And obviously a lot of people have trail camera videos of small bucks making giant rubs and giant bucks making small rubs. So it's not necessarily as much about the size of the rub per se, it's about the size the rub is off the ground. So usually when a big mature buck, they're bigger, right? So their bodies are going to be bigger, they're going to be thus possibly taller, and more than likely they're going to be taller than a 3.5-year-old buck because they're fully developed and they're bigger deer. So this is a really good sized rub here, but as I'm looking at it, it's fairly low to the ground. So a 2.5, 3-year-old buck could have just shredded this tree up, but it's a good sign. I'm starting to see more sign here the further back we go, and I'm hoping my plan is right by looking at the maps and where we're headed. So I just kind of want to touch on that point quick here. It's not necessarily about how big the tree is or how big the rub is. It's just kind of how when I look at it, it's how high off the ground it is. So if it's up here, that means there's a bigger deer. He doesn't want to bend over as far because he's possibly older. So One point I wanted to put out, this is a pretty good spot. Looks like the bucks are gonna pop over the edge here and go into that other draw. So I'm gonna make a mental note of this place and keep headed back. We're like getting to the area where I've been looking at on the maps, and it's almost better than I thought. It's super thick in here, and it totally looks like a bedding area. To the left of me here, right of the camera, we have like a really nasty drop off, and for the most part, deer are not going to work the middle third of the ridge, especially here. And I'd be almost apt to say they're going to only use the 10% on the top and the 10% on the bottom, unless they get pushed or they get forced into there. Naturally, deer do not want to side hill that hard. It's really nasty. So I think a lot of these deer bedding on this point here, especially bucks, or down in the hollow in there, they're going to naturally come up and funnel around the field, or they're going to drop straight down and up to get into the field. So we're back here a good amount, not super far, but I think a lot of people would have dropped off. So keep moving, keep learning. Okay, so I literally just did that interview right there, and I look up and I see this rub here, and this is exactly what we were talking about on that last rub there. That last rub was all the way down to here, and it went up. This rub doesn't start until like my thigh, and it runs all the way up to my shoulder, and I'm like 5'11", almost 6 foot. So I'm saying this is going to be a big mature deer, and there's bucks in here because I'm looking at other little rubs all the way around here. So I'm getting pretty excited about this place, and I haven't even been into it yet, so hopefully it's as good as I think it's going to be. So I just wanted to kind of show that so you guys can compare the size difference, the height difference that we were just talking about on that last rub. So I'm going to say this one is definitely an older deer. I'm not saying it's going to be a mega giant, but he's definitely a mature whitetail just because the rub starts further up than the last rub we looked at. I was glad we found that so I could point that out. So often you all see Hunter and I talking about transitions and diversity of habitat. And I wanted you guys to show everybody a transition line that's a little bit different than what you usually see when you're like on a field edge and stuff. So everybody understands the field edge. But as you see behind me, we got this big chunk of timber here, and it goes for a while. Now, in this timber, you can look and you can see that there's different trees. It looks like there's some birches, and then there's some oaks, and that ridge, the ridge over there is an even different transition and different type of habitat. We have the birches here, and on that other ridge there, I'm seeing more oaks and acorns. So there's your diversity there. And behind me here, you see that it gets really thick here. I don't really know what those little trees are, but just really small, thick trees that are growing up. And then on top of that, we have a overgrown CRP field. So all in here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different habitat changes and different transition lines. And you're going to find a majority of this deer sign on the edges of these, because deer are going to want to travel the edges depending on the wind and the situation that they're moving, but they're usually going to want to walk next to one of them smelling from a different area. So hopefully I explained that right. And I just kind of want to point that out, that not all transition lines that we talk about are just your natural hard timber to field edge. So just right here I'm looking at multiple different habitats, so pretty cool. And hopefully you guys can use that out in the field as well. There's something sneaking out of there. But so we found the bedding. We started working our way down this ridge along like a trail that was really well defined through this little field, and the sign wasn't looking very good. And then finally I found a J-hook trail, which I jumped on it right away, because usually bucks, they'll J-hook around and they'll bed down. And I started to see more rubs and more sign and more deer tracks. and then I ended up seeing that rub from a ways away. And then right here you can tell I'm sitting in this buck's bed. And how I know this is a buck's bed, other than the rub, is there's just one single bed all the way around here. And usually doe family groups are going to bed in a circle, and they're all going to see and smell from all different angles. Now this buck is bedded with the chance that he's going to smell anything coming down to him. And I think there's going to be a predominant wind coming from that way, and he's going to kind of overlook, and he's going to feel safe, and he may even bed looking up this way. But this is a buck bed. You got the rub right here. I've got rubs all around. I can see 3 or 4 different rubs around here. And I don't know necessarily how big he is, but it's a buck bed. There's hair in it, and you can obviously tell that there's been a buck bedding in here with this snow. So it's a good find. I marked it on my Onyx maps, and I think there's a good chance that if I hunt and I'm up that way, he's going to work his way up that way, because there's no food that way. And there might be good acorns here early season, which will change things, but the closest food is going to be that way. That way there's some food, but it's not like it's going to be straight down, straight up, and he's not going to want to do that. So good find. I'm happy I dropped over the edge. Well, that's not good to see. Deer just laying here dead. But I don't know if somebody put a bad hit on it. There's like orange peels around here, so really hoping that somebody didn't shoot it and leave it. That'd be pretty crappy, without swearing. But I'm gonna buzz into here because it looks pretty thick. So see what's in here. Oh, a dead deer in here.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's really weird. I don't know if they were shot. I mean, they came in here, because it's like really thick. I don't think anybody's really pushing back in there, so I don't know if they just feel safe in here, or if people shot them and then drug them into this thing. I don't know.
Really weird.
It's really weird, but it's too bad. Hopefully these people aren't just shooting to shoot. But just kind of keep working our way out of here. Alright, so we're just now leaving. We kind of froze out there, and it was really windy, but the very first place that I went to was kind of the best looking spot of the area. So I really like that spot. I kind of got some intel. I found a buck bed. But the plan is now is we drove by a couple different places that I want to go to, but we kind of ran out of time today. So we're gonna go back eventually, hopefully when it's a little bit warmer and when deer antlers are mostly popping off, so maybe we could find some sheds. But overall, I really think these next couple places are gonna be really good because the hills are extremely steep to access them. So I think that's gonna push off a lot of pressure. So I hope everybody found some information out of the video, and I hope it turned out all right. So if you guys like the video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and to subscribe to see some future content. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one.